Hey, good morning. Welcome to Integrated Preparedness, and we have a special one for you today. And I won't tell you all the stuff we talked about before we started this, because well, you just can't know about that. Okay, but I have Mark here with me today. We're going to talk about. Uh, I had a question, and I want to ask you a couple of things before we get to that. But I had a question from somebody, and I tried to find it, but I can't. And somebody was asking, "What about?" Um, uh, Dealing with stressful situations, trauma, emergency situations after SHTF and things like that. And of course, I've dealt with a lot of that, but I have a guy here that that knows, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit because I think it's important. I think a lot of people have a tendency. You're a little bit out of the. Mark just said we need a producer, and we do.
Yeah.
That's right. You stay put. I'll move the camera because I don't want you to be cut off there. All right. And so we're going to talk about that because there's a lot of people on video on YouTube that talk about these things. A lot of them have not had the experience. To be real honest, good for them. They're trying to help. They're trying to get information out there. But you've heard me say before that it's the experience that teaches you. Training can take you up to a certain level, but after that, it's experience that is the true teacher. And your training will allow you to either learn or not learn as much from the teacher, but the teacher is going to be there, and you better be ready. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%.
So we're going to be talking about that. Before we get into that, I want to say the voting is in. No, not the presidential voting, but the voting on my new hat. Those of you who watched my last one, Kelly's been after me for 20 years to get a black hat. I resisted because I said only bad guys and country singers wore black, and I've never liked them. But I got one, and then I put it up to everybody, and and you all voted. Two people didn't like it much, and everybody else, I mean, overwhelmingly loved it. So, okay, so I now have a
I didn't vote, but I like it.
do you like it?
I like
Is that all right?
Looks good.
Okay.
Pulling off.
Well, since we're both here to give you an idea. Now I won't be wearing this out when I'm working. I just wore this to show you all. When we get out, we're going to go out and do a big ass house. I shouldn't use that kind of language on this. We're going to do a big house way out south. Some friends of ours, and I would say this house is probably equal to about, what would you say, 4 or 5 normal big houses?
Oh, at least.
Not normal houses, but big houses.
Big houses.
Yeah, plus a
Carriage
cottage,
house, yeah.
plus a carriage house. Yeah. So we're going to be out there in the hot sun. It's going to warm up. It's still a little cool here. By the way, I'm wearing a bearskin. People say, "Is that a bearskin hoodie you're wearing, Steve?" Yes, it is, and I'm going to do a video review on this to tell you exactly what I think about it. And I'll tell you right now, it's not all good. But it's good for today. It's got a lot of pockets, and we need a lot of pockets when we do houses. So we're going to go out. So when we get out there, now Mark is wearing his straw, and I will be switching over to my straw because it'll keep the sun off of my face, and it'll give me a little shade and all that. You don't want to wear this on a warm day, but since we were doing this and it's not warm yet, here we are.
We're still warm here in Kansas.
Yeah. So are you looking forward to Election Day? By the way, before we get into today's topic.
I am looking forward to it. It's going to be a interesting next 3 months at least. You know, regardless of the results, it's looking. Well, we can all be hopeful with our results, but I'm looking forward to it. We'll see how all the voting collection and counting goes, I think.
Yeah, won't we though?
Yeah.
I just put one up over on the American Reversion channel about the problem. Here is the problem, and I tell you all exactly what the problem is. If you're interested in knowing what the problem is above all the problems, it's on the American Reversion channel. The link is down below. And as I got to thinking, and I said on that, I said, I haven't had a lot to say on the American Reversion channel leading up to it. You know, when Kamala took it over, I thought, well, I'm going to say a lot about this. But no, because it's all the same trash. It's nothing new. It's just idiocy every day. And I don't consume myself with idiocy. Do you?
No, I mean, there's very little reason to consume anything because there's nothing going on.
Nothing happening except stupid stuff that gets everybody all riled up. Okay, nothing's happening, but people think that it's something to get all riled up about. It's not. But when the election happens, then I'm going to have a lot more to talk about over there because then it will matter,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And as I get to, we might do this more often if you're up to it. I mean,
Sure.
it's up to you, but I thought we might just have some after this. Whenever you're over here for lights or anything
Yeah.
else, we might get together and have a little podcast, I guess.
We could do that.
If you're up to that,
Yeah, definitely.
Okay,
We
well,
could.
good call.
We're definitely good at talking, so we can fill
We
this.
can talk. We can
If
talk.
there's somebody out there listening, even if there's not, we'll
Yeah.
still talk.
That's right. We can call it Coffee with Steve and Mark.
There you
or
go.
Something. And we'll have our. Hey, Mark's drinking out of his Stone Mountain first annual gathering.
There we go.
If you weren't there, you can't have one, but he
Yeah.
was, so he's there, and I'm drinking out of course, our rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. So let's take a sip, and then we'll get to this.
Sounds good.
Mark drinks much more politely than I do.
I know. I was just gonna say I didn't hear the slurp that.
Well, let me try
that,
again.
That makes everybody so upset. That's what we're talking about. There we go.
I drink like a horse from a trough.
We just made some people mad, I think.
That's all right. Bye-bye. Okay, Mark. Now, to introduce Mark, and you correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure.
Mark retired from Johnson County, Kansas Med-Act as a lieutenant. He had been a paramedic and their special operations medic for how many years?
25 years total.
25 years. And then medical retired, right?
Yep.
And because after you do that stuff for a long time, lifting people who are heavier than they should be and all sorts of things, you get banged up.
Yep.
And then went into nursing, and he is an ER nurse and has been CRN, which I always get this wrong. Is it critical resource nurse?
Response.
Critical response nurse. Okay, critical response nurse. This is where I met Mark, working at the hospital, and I saw when they brought in somebody who was just about to die, before they even called the doctor, they were calling Mark. The CRNs are the ones that know, they're the ones that'll save your body. And their knowledge is just, it's something else. I can't believe. When I sit around and talk to Mark and he gets on it and explaining these things, I just listen, right? And I won't say I learn, but I hear. I can't learn as much as he teaches, but I try. And so this is why, now I've been after Mark for a couple of things. I've been after him to get his own channel because he has a lot to share. I've also been after him to put together medical bags because I know a lot of people are out there doing that, but they don't have the experience of someone like Mark. And I'm not putting those people down. I think it's great that they do it, but you need, if I was going to get a bag and I hadn't put it together myself, I want Mark to be the one that puts it together, that puts the stuff in there you need it. So that's what I've been after him for. We'll see if he does it.
Yeah, like he's been after me. I'm it's on my list. It's a short list.
Oh, good. I hope so.
Yeah, it is.
I hope so. Now,
No.
to the subject at hand, to answer this person's question.
Sure.
You probably remember the first big thing you rolled up on. I do. I remember the first one I rolled up on. It was a wreck on a highway, and it was just demolished. And I crawled into and I'll be honest, a couple of the other deputies, just out on a highway, you know what highway accidents can be.
Oh yeah.
A couple of the other deputies were a little bit standoffish. That doesn't bother me. So I'm not saying if it bothers you that's wrong, because it bothers most people, right? But I got in there, and I mean, it was a bloody mess, the whole inside of that car, and I was trying to see who was, the ambulance hadn't gotten there, and I was trying to see who was what and what was going on, and by the time I got out of that car, I was just covered in blood. After my uniform, my hands, everything. So you probably remember the first time you did.
Yeah, I remember. I think you don't. That's one of the things about working in this business is that you don't forget. Everything leaves a mark on you, and you collect it, you deal with it, and you put it away. And but you can't pretend to forget it because it's impossible.
Right.
So you never forget. I remember all of them. You can drive through your city. I think most people will. It's like driving past a cemetery if you have a loved one that's passed away. Every time you drive past, they're there. And that's the way it is when you work in emergency services, law enforcement, fire, police. You can't drive by a street corner or a house without remembering what's there.
That's exactly
what happened
right.
there.
Yeah.
You don't think about it. You don't have to. It's not in the front of your mind, but it's there.
That's right. So I'm going to turn it over to you and just say, this person's question was, how do you, and one of the things that I remember was when you said when you're training people, and you went through training scenarios.
Yes.
And they'd have people out there. Police did the same thing. We called it situational training. And you got actors out there, and the new paramedic or medic shows up, and a lot of people are screaming and yelling, and some are quiet.
Right.
And this was one of the first lessons that you taught them, right?
That's right. They typically, when we'd have these scenarios, design scenarios to overwhelm resources in an emergency situation, you got actors, you don't know what you're doing, whether it's a fire, whether it's a building collapse, whatever. You got lots of people. First thing that happens is, well, someone's got to be the first one there, and then everybody swarms you like a bunch of bees, and everybody wants help. And one of the things that the first things that I would teach my students or my interns was that not to get distracted by everybody's loud cries and volume, because those were the people that were breathing or surviving. It was the ones that couldn't scream and cry that we needed to focus on. And immediately the first job would be to quarter off an area and isolate people that were not extremely injured but had lots to say, to keep them from getting in the way and keep them from getting hurt further by other responders and other things going on. And a lot of times, something that you can't necessarily teach until you experience is people will get out and get in that situation, and they can plan it all they want to, but they don't realize what it feels like to be overwhelmed, and their fight or flight response kicks in. They don't necessarily faint or run away, but they freeze. They vapor lock in a way, and they don't act. And or they do act, but they act on what's immediately in front of their face, which is, an abrasion or somebody crying, and that's not the way to deal with a mass casualty scenario or a scenario where there's a lot of unknowns and you need to take upon a leadership role to maximize the amount of rescues that you can provide and save as many people as you can. And in order to do that, you have to be directive. And we would do what we'd call a scene survey, a walk around, which after you deal with immediate people, we would do that. We'd walk around and make sure that we have a defined area and know where everybody potentially could be. And then it's all about getting in further resources and everything. So you really have to take on, as much as you want to get in there and be the one person that's going to make a corrective action on somebody's life. You don't know who that person is and or how many people are there, and you wouldn't want to miss something. So you have to take on more of a leadership command role until there's somebody to pass it off on it to, and then maybe you can get in there and do more medical care.
And this comes from experience. The person who's in the leadership role needs to be the person with experience.
Yes.
That takes us back again what I was going to say. Even when you go from a situational training situation to real life, in situational training, in the back of your mind, this is a test.
Right.
This is not real. The first time you roll up on something real makes it entirely different. And you and I have seen a lot of people die.
Yeah.
And most people have never even seen a dead person. I mean, we've seen hundreds of dead bodies, thousands maybe. Well, maybe not thousands, but hundreds. But we have also seen the person die in front of us, right?
Right.
That is different. When you see, and new people, a lot of people who have not experienced that. I mean, I've known a lot of people that didn't want to see a dead body.
Yeah.
It freaks them out. And the idea that somebody is actually dying and they see the death in front of them can really back them up.
That's the amazing part about it, is that you can go, like the scenario we were talking about, in any type of scenario you train, even if you are prepared for it and you have the advantage of knowing some variables going in, that you're actually going to respond to something big. You're not just going to go take care of one person and have plenty of resources. You're going to go. You already know you're going to go to something where you don't have enough people and enough resources and more than you can handle. Somebody that's new they might not freeze at all. They might react perfectly according to their training and everything, just like you expect. But until you're faced with the reality of the situation and an unknown, you don't know what you're going to do. They don't know what they're going to do, and you hope that their training kicks in. But that's exactly why people end up leaving the business. I think the washout rate, not washout, but the attrition rate is on average about 5 years in emergency services. It has been for a while. I don't know what it is today, but back then it was about 5 years. Because there's just only so much that people could handle, because there's always another patient to take care of, and
in a real active situation.
Yes.
Now there are plenty of areas, and I mean you get into the more rural areas, they're not dealing with this stuff every day. They deal with them occasionally, certainly, But when you're talking about active areas like you and I work, I mean this is every day,
every day,
and sometimes multiple during a day.
Yeah, you'll run 17 to 25 responses a day on an extremely busy period of time, and each one of those can be as big or small. And as soon as you're done with one, you're ready for another one, and that's the job. And you gotta put yourself together and maximize your resources that you have to work with, equipment, and move on. And that's where you have to be. If you ready for it, emotionally dialed in, and pragmatic about it. You can't be distracted, or can't be following you to the next call. I mean, the first time someone sees somebody go from pink to gray, you can't be thinking about that forever,
right?
Or on the next call.
Once also now she wasn't a paramedic, she was an EMT, one that we both know, and she told me about a call she was on. It was to a trailer house, and I forget exactly why the woman hadn't been seen for. I think it was a woman. It doesn't matter. It hadn't been seen for a while. There were smells coming out of the trailer. They couldn't get into the trailer. I don't know why they didn't break in. I mean, in the city, we just would have slammed that door open, right?
But, right.
But for some reason, their crew didn't want to do that. It was a rural. I think a lot of them were volunteers. I'm not sure, but it was a rural crew, and they didn't want to just slam it open. We tend to be very aggressive in the city, don't we? Get out of my way. If there's something that I need to do, I'm going to go do it. Well, anyway, they looked up through they said, well, we can get in this window. Okay. Well, she was the only one who was in shape enough, and you've seen some ambulance crews that wouldn't be able to get up in there. Yeah. She was able to get up there. She was very fit. Got up through this window and then saw the body down on the floor. Well, it had been there for some time because the dogs in bed had eaten on it, and as she saw it, there was a cat nibbling on some of the guts. And so she crawled through. Didn't bother her. Well, it's not like, oh, cool, this is neat. But she was able to gut it up and go on. Now that would have stopped a lot of people right there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And she crawled in, and as she was climbing down through the window, it kind of slipped, and she ended up with her boot right down into the eaten away rib cage and into the guts of the person, and then she slipped. This is that dark humor that those of us in the business, we can make a lot of jokes about this, and it's not funny for people, But and then she went unlocked the door for the other guys. This is not something that the average person is going to be able to do until they have a lot of experience. Right? Yeah. And it's not anything we want to do, but after a certain amount of time, you go, well, okay, here we go.
Yeah, and in those situations where there's nothing to do, it's, okay, well, let's move on to the next one and try to take care of somebody, because now it sounds like that situation was a coroner's case real quick. Nothing to do there for emergency providers, and it's a crime scene then for an unattended death. Right. But yeah, like you said, anytime there's some sort of check or welfare response on any sort of place or an unattended death, it's a crime scene, and gaining entry, whether it's law enforcement or fire department spreading the door, getting in there fast, that's a priority, and trying to save somebody. And a lot of times in those situations, you can tell before you even get in there, because unfortunately what you see what you see on TV, which I don't know why it's so popular, because what you see on TV is addictive, especially when you see these shows about how people get so big and eat and they're hoarding and stuff like that. It's entertainment for people because they're fascinated by it. But what you don't see on TV is that you can't smell anything. And that's something that is overlooked a lot in the world. It's like the sights and sounds are one thing, but the smells are something that you have to get your head around. And it sounds odd, but that's one of our senses that you have to address, because you'll make an association with that forever.
Yeah. I'll throw in a funny story here.
Oh, yeah.
Thought about
yeah.
this when Kelly and I either were dating or just got married. She had this one particular perfume. I don't know if you've heard this story or not. She had this one perfume that she just loved, and she said everybody just raved about it, but I had never mentioned it. And I had never said, "Ooh, you smell good" or anything like that. And so she asked me one day. I wish Kelly were here because she'd laugh. She's in the house. I said, she says, "Don't you like my perfume?" And I said, "Not really." She said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, it kind of smells like a decaying body to me."
That's a compliment she didn't want.
She didn't wear it for years. She says, "What?"
Yeah.
She says, "Only you would know that."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well," so she didn't wear it for years, but now she started wearing it again, and it smells fine. So maybe my association has dissipated, right?
Well, yeah, possibly. Some of those things, yeah, you can. I mean, not to go off track, but I have a similar had a similar experience before I even got into medicine when I was in college, and I was taking anatomy and physiology dissection laboratory and we were dissecting human cadavers, and that was the kind of situation where you wear a lab coat and you wear the same clothes every day and all semester long. And you spend hours in there looking for things, identifying things, and getting familiar with it, and tagging it and all that. You come home and you get in the shower and you put those clothes out. You leave them outside or you put them somewhere where you don't have to smell it, because formaldehyde is something that permeates everything, and it's hard to get that off. Well, I made the mistake of coming home, and I was starving, and I immediately ordered pizza from one of our favorite cheap pizza places that we used to get pizza from all the time. And as soon as I brought that to my mouth, I realized I did not change my clothes, and I could smell the formalin. And as I bit into that pizza, I was immediately wanting to vomit, because I made an association with the smell of this pizza and the formaldehyde. To this day, I cannot eat that pizza.
And that kept you from becoming a cannibal, didn't it?
It did. You can't forget those things. Yeah, I forget what the company was, but their $5 Frenzy pizza deal was a great deal.
Little Caesars?
It wasn't Pyramid. It wasn't Little Caesars. It was something. I forget what it was. It was in Lawrence, Kansas. But,
I remember Pyramid. I love Pyramid.
Pyramid pizza. I can sleep.
And they'd serve honey with their crust.
Oh, yes, that was good. They had those in a couple places, and I don't know if you can find them anymore, but that was a good pizza. But I didn't make the mistake with Pyramid. I can still do that.
Okay.
But that particular pizza, no, can't do it, because I made that association. Now, Kelly is not a piece of pizza, so the pizza was not offended. but I was upset because I liked the pizza and it was cheap.
Oh, that's funny.
So lesson learned about smells.
Getting back to, I'll just let you answer this person's question now that we've told some stories.
Yeah.
What would you suggest as a person to prepare for the kind of stress, emotional overload in a traumatic situation that might come about in an SHTF Tiatwaki situation? How would you advise
the stress of it all? Well, again, this comes back to maintaining a not a emotional disassociation or anything, but you have to be focused on task. You can't be distracted by visual deterrence and the gravity of the situation because it's something you haven't seen before. I think whether it's taking care of an individual or whether it's seeing something on fire for the first time, you can't be starstruck. And I think hopefully you've had some training that you can call on that. But I think what what is most important to do is to not run and not immediately jump into action just because you don't know what to do. Taking a moment to stop and take it in for a minute and assess yourself and assess the situation. If you have people in front of you, you can do a quick head count and see where they are and how many they are. Just any of those techniques that you can think of to buy yourself some time to adjust to the situation before you act, and then you need to act pragmatically as far as your medical training, whatever you can do, airway, breathing, circulation, and in EMS, we always start with hemorrhage control. There's a massive hemorrhage algorithm. You treat massive bleeds at first because you can bleed out in seconds, and that's important to take care of because you can breathe. If you can't breathe and you don't have blood, you're not going to survive. But if you're bleeding out fast, even if you can breathe, you're not going to be breathing for long. So we start with massive hemorrhage, take care of our airway and circulation, and then we address shock and trauma. We keep our patients warm. But the reason we start with a scene survey and a pause is because a lot of times we have to exfil the area and remove somebody from an area that is dangerous before we get camped out and provide care. Whether this is because there might be bullets flying over, whether it's an unsafe structure, or whether this is some sort of assault or crime, and somebody might come back to finish a job they didn't finish.
Right.
They didn't start.
Yeah.
They started. So there's a whole lot of things. And maybe you're on the highway and you need to remove somebody from an area that, an unstable vehicle, or just from an area where there's other traffic because people are attracted to flashing lights and stuff like that, and they can be magnetically pulled to it. And there's a lot of people that are hurt on the highways just because they're staring at something and they immediately draw to it.
Yep.
Like a moth to a flame.
Yeah, they slam into an ambulance.
I don't think, like you said, I don't think you can teach somebody to be emotionally detached immediately. I don't think you know until you experience it for the first time. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't train.
Right.
And I think one of the best defenses you can have as a person that experiences it for the first time is to pause.
Right.
And pause doesn't mean you're not providing care. It doesn't mean you're freezing. I'm not saying don't do anything.
Don't just stand there and go, what should I do? Yeah.
You need to be thinking, but do not do the first thing just because it comes up to you and react to it.
And this comes with experience. I mean, it sounds like there's a time element there, but once you have experience, this stuff is going through you like this. Okay. Yeah. I got it.
And it gets faster over time.
Exactly. Now, one thing that we do have to, and you and I have both experienced this, and one thing that is a problem is that you become so inured to this, you become so inoculated to this that you actually can lose your humanity. This is just another day at the office.
Yes.
And that is a big danger with emergency services people. And you want to guard against that. I went through a long stretch of my life where, I'll be honest, human life meant really not much to me because I had seen such a bunch of loss of it.
Yeah.
And I'd seen such a bunch of morons. And I know you've gone through that too.
Yeah.
But that's not the way that God meant us to live. We are to have a human empathy. We are to care about our fellow man. There are appropriate emotional responses to these things that we can't experience without allowing it to destroy us. Would you agree with that?
There's a time to feel and there's a time to focus, and just being emotionally detached for the moment to do an action is okay, because you have to do your job, do whatever you can to maximize care, but that doesn't mean you live there.
Right. And don't let it hollow you out.
Yeah, and I used to tell my kids, pay attention to what emotion you spend the most time in, because it becomes your normal.
Right.
And that's the same way whether you're happy, sad, angry, or anything. If you're emotionally detached and you stay that way too long, that becomes normal. So other things start to feel abnormal. So that's something to guard against, especially when you work in a business where everything you see is traumatic. And you spend a long period of time, seeing death and dying and having it not affect you.
Exactly. I can't see how much time we have left here. We better. We
wrap
better.
it
We
up?
got more to say, but we're about
Oh yeah.
out of time. But my camera, I got to get an iPhone so that we can go longer. But my kids would be happy to hear that.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, thanks, man, for
Certainly.
joining. I hope you all got a little bit out of that. We'll do more on this, and join us again for Steve and Mark with coffee. I think we're going to do some of these because we have a lot to talk about.
Oh,
So
sure.
just remember, prepare yourself. Training is good. No training is better than bad training, but good training beats not training. And the better training you get, the better. And try to get training for people who have actually done it. Here we say this so often, right? There's a lot of people out there training things that they've learned about in books. And, good for them. I'm glad they're out there helping, trying to help. But you got to go for the experience.
Yeah.
Make sure you know the source of your training and prepare yourself mentally to the extent that you can. And you can do this to a little bit through visualization. But like we both said, when reality steps up and introduces itself, you're going to realize it's different than your visualization.
Yes. 100%.
Okay. Well, you all have a good day. Remember that, like it says on the back of Mark's cup, turn that around.
There
We
go.
prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow, and we'll talk to you all later. See you later.
Yeah.